Hello and welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. Again, I'm Pat Yates. Man, I have a great conversation today. Ramon Van Meer with Genius Litter. He's traveled an interestingly similar path to me through Shark Tank, and we worked together for talked 6 to 9 months ago about process and things he needed to do to prepare. And his episode just went on TV, and man, was it incredible. He did such an amazing job. He added humor. He had a lot of positives he talked about. He had people go in and out, back in, and then ended up with 3 of the 5 sharks making an offer on his business. Really just amazing episode. This guy is such an amazing dude. He sold one of his businesses through Quiet Light, has worked on other multiple ones with Quiet Light. He's a friend of Quiet Light and will be going to the Shark Tank reunion with us this year and probably helping Ethan and I talk to some people about the Quiet Light experience. This guy has taken every step you can imagine in business. He's come to the United States from the Netherlands. He's built a company that he sold. He built another company that he put on Shark Tank that he's hoping to scale and sell. He's just an unbelievable entrepreneur, smart guy, amazing conversation. Oddly, he worked with Joe in the past, which is crazy because I'm not sure why that is. I always have to put in some little shot to Joe, but hopefully, in the future, he's going to continue to work with Quiet Light and do a lot of things. He's one of our favorite guys. I'm excited to talk to Ramon Van Meer about his Shark Tank experience today. So let's get right to it. Ramon, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast again, man. It's great to see you.
Yes, I'm very happy to be back.
Man, I tell you what, we waited to do this episode until after your Shark Tank air because both of us have now been on. So this is going to be such a fun conversation. And I think a lot of the people out there will really find some really actionable stuff. And if they're trying to apply for Shark Tank, they're going to understand some stuff. But before we get going with that, tell the audience about yourself, introduce yourself, where you're from, and what you've done in the past.
Okay, 30-second pitch. Original from the Netherlands, moved to the States 13 years ago. Since then, I've been buying and selling mainly very small websites and blogs. Sold a bunch through Quiet Light. The most famous one is a soap opera blog years ago that I sold through you guys. And now I'm selling cat litter, and I was just on Shark Tank a couple weeks ago.
It's really amazing. It's so funny to sit there and watch that episode and you talk about a business you sold and knowing that came through Quiet Light. It's really incredible. I know you're a big friend of the business. Joe knows you really well. Obviously, we were so excited. Quiet Light got to put stuff out on social about you being a client, being on Shark Tank. That's awesome. So maybe let's do this. Let's rewind a little bit. Tell us about that business and who you worked with and maybe how that whole transaction went. I'm curious on that.
Okay. Yeah, this was, I launched that website, I think in 2015. It was a blog about, daytime TV, and it started growing. I was pretty successful building online communities mainly on Facebook, of, daytime fans, and was able to drive that traffic to a website. And then on the website, I monetized through Google Ads. And I already knew about Quiet Light because I had another business before that. And so I got introduced to Amanda. That was the first broker I actually worked with even before this one. And I was ready to sell, ready to move on after 2.5 years, 3 years. And I reached out I reached out to Joe because I got to know him as well through some common friends and meeting him at conferences. And I felt like, oh, I'm not sure if my website, because at that time I was already doing, a couple $1 million in revenue and high profit margin. I thought maybe this is too big at that time. I thought, oh, Quiet Light is, between 100,000 and, $1 million or 2 million. But Joe said, no, we can find you a buyer. Let's just list it, see what happens. And it was a great experience because we listed it. Within 1 week, I got not one, not two, but 3 offers. Same actually what happened in the Shark Tank. It was a great experience.
I tell you what, working with Joe had to be amazing. I know that Joe's been on sabbatical. He hasn't really done a lot other than working the corporate side for a long time, but such an amazing broker. We look at his numbers and the people he was getting businesses sold for was absolutely amazing. I'm sure he did a great job with that. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about, where you're headed now. Yeah, I know that we wanted to talk about the Shark Tank process, but since that point up to when you got on Shark Tank, what other things have you done? Is this it?
No. And by the way, very quick about Joe. I really, in that transaction, I really saw that he really cared for me as a person because what happened between the day we listed and the day we got, offers, a couple months passed by, and mainly because it took some time for me to pull some stuff, and the revenue started exploding on my end. So my multiple was suddenly extremely low. So I called Joe. It's like, and I was so scared of calling him. It's like, man, I don't know. I think we should pull the listing and relist it in a couple months. And I was so afraid that Joe would be afraid, like mad at me, if like, no, we've already done all this work. You have to pull through. But he said, like, no, you're totally right. You have to do what's best for you, and I'm on your side. Let's just do this. We're gonna, take it back. And what happened was that we got much more out of it a couple months later. So since then, I'm a big fan of Joe, and I will be forever grateful.
You
Um,
know, Actually, not to interject, but that's kind of an interesting point. We talk a lot about entrepreneurs. We don't talk as much about Quiet Light on this, oddly, because we don't really talk about our process or anything like that. But I think
yeah,
it's amazing that you say that because, Mark and Joe both believe as the guys at the top of the organization for the longest time that we should be judged by the quality of our conversations. And Joe was my mentor starting out, and he was really clear about one thing. This is not about me. It's not about Quiet Light. It's about the entrepreneurs. So if someone comes in, we're not fishing for commissions. If we look at the business and say, for instance, the first 3 months of the trailing 12 are bad and the last 9 are really good, we're not going to list it because of that. We're going to wait 90 to 120 days to make sure the maximum value can be there, even if that's a year, which he's applying exactly what we believe. As advisors, we aren't in a hurry to get you to market. Most people that want to list right away usually aren't ready. The people
mhm.
that wait and then make sure that they have a calculated plan are the ones that are successful. And clearly, Joe applied that on that. That's absolutely amazing. So go ahead into what you've been doing since that sale.
Yeah. So after that exit, I made a mistake not taking a sabbatical. I should have listened to Joe. He also advised me to take a breather and just enjoy. But I bought a couple businesses, online businesses. Um, I bought a SaaS one. I bought a YouTube channel and an e-commerce business. And a big mistake, hindsight, because it's like, they're so totally different businesses to run that you need different type of people and talent and processes. Um, but I still, I sold the SaaS business. I flipped that one. The YouTube channel I still have, but it's basically on autopilot. And then the e-commerce business that I bought started, doing really well. And then I basically bought other smaller pet brands. It's an e-commerce business in the pet space. I bought other smaller brands and rolled them up into one. And then 2.5 years ago, I came up with the idea. Actually, I didn't come up with the idea. I saw another brand launching and health indicating cat litter, started doing some research, and then we decided to also go into that market. And that litter brand has been, doing really, really well in the last couple of years.
It really has. I mean, I was amazed watching the episode, so I didn't really know as much about the business till I got into that, which is incredible. So, the one reason that we're talking today is because Joe, not only did he help you sell a business, he helped link you with me. Which, not that I had anything really to do with it, but what was it, 9 months or a year ago, we started talking about this with you getting on Shark Tank and talking about my experience and what things you need to do. I know that. How did that come about? How did you end up starting the Shark Tank process for Genius Litter?
Yeah. So I came to the States 13 years ago. And I think Shark Tank started a year before, 2 years before that. But I remember coming here to this country, I was obsessed by Shark Tank for some reason, because for me, Shark Tank really stood for the American dream, right? And I moved here because I wanted to achieve the American dream. So I was really obsessed by this show. I even made my friends listen to me pitching fake product ideas that I had, like, oh, this could be, a great Shark Tank product.
Right.
And they had to suffer through these horrible pitches of mine. But anyways, but I never really, at that time, I only had like very like online businesses, not no products or physical things that could be, a Shark Tank product. Um, Up to a couple years ago when I bought my first e-commerce business. So I started applying. The first time I applied was 4 years ago. So I applied 4 times until until last year I finally got on. And every year I got a little further, um, and but never made it to the last step until
Yeah.
last year. I actually knew the casting, I forgot it's called, director or casting person that helped me the 3 other times. So I emailed, she actually emailed me, like, hey, I see you've done, you're doing Genius Litter. You should apply again. And it's okay, yeah, let's do it. So she actually, I have to give her a lot of credit because she actually reached out to me. And I applied, and as you know, that was the start of the million rounds and steps you have to do to finally get on the show. So, but it
That
was
is
it
amazing.
was at last April. So it's like, 9 months worth of work, not constantly, but it's like sprints, right? Like you have to, you know, do some stuff for them, and then you wait, and then you have to. It's really a hurry and wait game.
That's incredible. See, I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult the process really is, and especially to get on. See, what's interesting about the two of us is we actually have a decade between our airings, which is an unbelievable testament to the show. I
Yeah.
was on season 5, episode 23. You were on 15. What is it,
Wow.
10? What is yours? 15 and what?
15 and 12.
Okay, so I was season 5, 23. You were 15, 10. This show's just a monster when it gets to it, but people don't really realize how difficult it is to actually get on and what the steps you have to go through. So I remember back to mine, like you, I applied in season 2, which was really early, and I
Mm.
got completely turned down. It wasn't even close. So I just sort of dropped it. And then season 5, the show was blowing up so much, they actually called me after they were going back through old applications. So I had the opportunity to get back, but I was like, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do it because the application process is so detailed. So tell me about your application. I know the application is just unbelievable and the due diligence you have to do to get in. It may have changed since I was in there. So tell us about that process.
No, I don't think it's changed. If anything, probably even got worse. I remember. I know that the application. So first you do the casting call, right? Like a casting producer, like will talk to you about your business and you explain, and then basically that's step one. But then the application where you have to fill out these like hundreds pages of questions of like from all the way like why are you an entrepreneur to your business to why are you doing what you're doing, your most successful things, your biggest fear. Like it's a very detailed application. um, that is still the case, and it takes like a lot of out because you want to do your best, give the best answers possible. So it's a very detailed application process, and then that's where I fell out. The other times was the audition video. So you have to record a 10-minute video with your pitch and talk a little bit about yourself. Um, and the 3 other times, that's where I basically fell off because my understanding is that they get over 20 or 25,000 applications a
Yeah.
year. And then all the way to the end, I don't know, like 100-ish end up going to LA to pitch the Sharks. So it's a very long and
Yeah.
process.
There's no question. When I remember back to mine was actually, I think the taping was September of 2013 and actually aired in April of 2014. But I was down to the very last. They called me and said, look, we're full. We need 2 or 3 more spots. Here's what we'll do. We'll fly you out. We'll let you pitch in front of the producers on the sound stage. And if we'd
Yes.
like you, we'll keep you. If not, we'll fly you home. So it's kind of a free roll to pitch in front of them to hope
Yeah.
to get on TV. Long story short, I killed the pitch. I stayed on and I taped the next day and mine ended up great. But were you in the same position, or did you have a spot and you just came out and taped, or did you have to go out and show what you were going to do before?
In my case, I had a spot. So I had a date where I needed to get out there, basically. I did they do like a pre tape, or I forgot how it's called, but where you basically do your pitch in front of the whole team, all the producers. But they do that over Zoom nowadays. Before, I think my understanding was people do it there in LA in person. Now, at least in my case, they did it over Zoom. But was still intimidating because you can see, you know, 20, 30, I don't know, even that like small Zoom, videos of people watching you while you do the pitch. Yeah. But
It's incredible. You know what's funny is this changed during COVID. I actually have a good friend of mine that I travel around speaking with, named Chris Carrera, who also, does a lot of mentoring of entrepreneurs. He was on during COVID when they were taping at the Win, and based on COVID, he had to sit in his room for 10 days. If he walked out of the door, they sent him home. If he said the 4th or 5th day, he almost left. He couldn't take it. So it's
yeah,
like some people go through way worse process than what we were able to do, but it's
yeah.
still sort of worth its weight in gold. So let's move on to when you actually taped. I mean, obviously, I remember that day. I was sitting there as nervous that you're standing in front of the doors. There's all that anxiety. Tell us about that feeling. How did it feel when you were getting ready to go?
Oh, I've been not as nervous as that as in my life. It was because before, um, so I was in the afternoon slot. So all the sharks are having lunch, and then you with a couple other entrepreneurs that will also tape in the afternoon, will walk through the set, right? Like, and a producer would just tell, like, okay, this is where you're going to stand. These are the doors. They're going to be closed. He goes really in detail. Um, and in my mind, I was just like, I should not forget. Please don't forget to pitch. Please don't forget to pitch. I like because sometimes you have a blackout, right? Like, and then and they tell you like, hey, there's no redos. If you screw up, you just have to, push yourself through it. We're not going to reshoot if you screw up your pitch. Um, and they tell you like, walk up. So there's a bunch of things you have to think about. Like, okay, you have to stand up. You have to stop at the indicator on the carpet. And on top of that, you're still also like, oh, my pitch, And yeah, I was very nervous. And then also like you told me that actually, like, when you walk on the carpet, it's not that you right away start. You have to wait. And that's, felt like, hours because you're just standing there. In my case, I'm standing there with a stuffed animal and dressed up like Einstein and, just waiting for the producer to give the cue. And then out of nowhere, you have to then, go from, being silent to give energy, 100% energy, right? Like, hey, sharks, my name is Ramon Van Meer. But luckily, I practiced the pitch so many times that I was able to, even if I was nervous, I was able to push through.
You know what? I think the people out there really can't get a perspective of what that's really like. Like it's such an interesting thing. You go up to your taping and you think you know everything that's going to go on. And really is kind of interesting because I could walk you through what's going to happen. I never spoke to anyone because it was season 5. I was sort of like, I had no idea what to expect. And for the listeners out there, and we're not giving anything away from Shark Tank. It's a great show. We know some of the producers. I still talk to some of them. But when you walk through those doors and walk up, you don't just start talking. You stand on an X and they take cameras in front, behind, beside, in front of the sharks for 45 seconds. And it seems like 3 hours because you're trying to keep a straight face. You're trying to remember your pitch. And all of a sudden there's this pause that if you're ready to roll, you're definitely at a stop. So did you feel good through that process and then started out right? I would assume because they edited. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I knew what to expect. That helped me a lot. If I did not know that, and then on the day it was like, hey, you have to stand there for a minute and just awkwardly look, to the sharks, I will be even. But yeah, in my mind it was like, you have to sort of smile, and I think they do it to take B-roll so they can edit that in other parts of your episode. But I was just like trying to, okay, the first sentence of my pitch, the first sentence, right, like that went through my mind. But yeah, to your point, because you put so much effort in getting to that point, getting there, it's months worth of work and emotional roller coaster. Like, do I get to the next round? No. Yes. Amazing. Oh shit. So much work, and it's and then when you're there, you just it was very nerve-wracking. And on top of that, it's like, you have the sharks that are celebrities, and then you have the cameras and the lights. And even though I didn't see the people, but I know there was tons of people in the backstage looking, it was intimidating. But.
Yeah. For the listeners out there that don't really understand this process, I myself was in there about an hour and 15 minutes. I don't know how long you were in there, but there are no drink breaks, no bathroom breaks. You're on the carpet and you're talking the whole time, and it's you against them with like 50 to 100 producers and hundreds of cameras sitting around you. It's not the least intimidating spot, so how did you feel that your pitch went? Did you roll through it pretty good, or did you eliminate some things and miss it, or did you hit it all?
Well, no, so the pitch was great, like the 90 seconds, 2-minute pitch that everyone does, in the beginning. That was great. And then you go to the question, part, and you don't know what questions they're going to ask. You also don't know where they're going to hammer on or which not. Like, for example, when I told the story that I had an exit before, I didn't know how they would respond. Would they actually get mad? Because sometimes they've done where the entrepreneur had an exit before, and then the sharks were like, well, what are you doing here? You already have money. What are you asking money for? You're blah, blah, blah. But so you don't know anything. They actually also don't know anything about you besides your name or the company name, because they see the setup, but they don't know your background. They don't know anything. So it's very hard to really prepare what to expect. And to your point, I think I was there over an hour. I don't know, because it was like sort of once I walked out, it was like so. But after that, I did think like, oh man, I should have said, a little bit more this or a little bit more that. But it's very hectic because the sharks also talk over each other, or you're answering one question and then another shark right away asks you another. So sometimes you're like, wait, who do I need to answer? So
I think one of the things that I found out after taping that was most disappointing to me and most nerve-wracking is that I wasn't able to see my episode until it aired. I don't know if that's still the same, but I was really nervous because mine went awful for about 50 minutes of that hour. Barbara went out quickly. Robert went out quickly. I had a BS royalty offer from the same people you did. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then luckily got Mark to really make some amazing comments that brought people back in. But it's one of those things that as you get going in that, your questions can either dictate your attitude, and sometimes it can't. I think you did an amazing thing by introducing humor early, because it lightened the situation, and I think it became more welcoming. So tell me about that process, because I thought your pitch was amazing, coming out in the Einstein outfit with Kevin O'Purry and stuff like
Yeah.
that. If people haven't seen it, you've got to watch it. It's really awesome, and the ending is even better. So tell us
Yeah.
about the idea of coming in the outfit. Was it calculated to make it a little lighter?
Yeah. So the first three times that I didn't get on, um, I did not do anything funny. But then I started thinking of, okay, the producers or the casting people, they're getting thousands of audition videos, right? So I assume they don't even watch the full 10 minutes. It's like, I think it's similar like an employer going through resumes. They just like the first 30 seconds that dictates. So I thought, okay, uh, all these videos, audition videos didn't work before. Maybe I should do something that at least make a producer or a casting person stop. Like, hey, what is this? What's going on? Right. So that's why I said, like, okay, let me try to do something funny, like an Einstein outfit with a real cat, and really try, sprinkle humor. Humor is very
Yeah.
tricky because it could be, you can very easily overdo it. Um, and yeah, it worked. The casting people loved it. The producers that were assigned to me also loved it, because at the end of the day, it's not a board meeting, it's a TV show, right? So the producers, their job is to make sure this is the best TV, and not a boring, product presentation. Um, so to prepare, I definitely prepared some of, like, puns that I could use, or like funny thing, and all the time, like, but it's also like my product um, is also easy to use, funny puns, right? Like, Mark scooped up the deal, or, um, and I had this prop, right? Kevin O'Purry. And so Kevin um, made a royalty deal, and then I looked to my co-founder and it's like, no, my co-founder is not happy with that deal, right? Like, so the product and the setup was also a little bit easy to keep the mood light and funny. So
That's incredible. I mean, the funny thing is, I walked through mine. Barbara went out quick. Robert actually went out quick. I had a royalty deal from Lori and Kevin, and then Mark gave a speech, and then Robert came back in, who I did a deal with. So walk us through what was happening with relation to the Sharks, because it changes your focus. If people go out, you really have to adjust your plan. It's like anything else. Everyone says you have a plan until you get hit in the mouth, and then you change exactly how your approach is going to be. So tell me, going in, maybe who you targeted, how it happened, and maybe how you pivoted during that time.
yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point, because you don't know who's going out, and how they tell you, like, hey, make sure you have a bottom line, like how much are you willing to give up before, um, and I came in asking $250,000 for 4% of equity. Um, and because we are already an established brand, we're already in retail, and do have some decent sized revenue, and so I was willing to negotiate. Like, you have to go in there, like, negotiate. That's part of
Yeah.
the deal, right? But you don't know how much they're gonna ask. Like, Kevin is known for the royalty deals, but also being want to have a big chunk of equity,
Yeah.
and so you don't know, how it's going to go. In my case, my guest shark was Emma. I cannot pronounce her last name properly. Probably
Yeah.
Greedy, uh, the Skims founder. She was very, like, I loved her, but it was not a product for her. So she went out first. Um, and then Mark Cuban went out pretty quickly after. I did not try to really hard to convince the person. Instead of, I just focused back on the three people that were still in, and
Yeah.
try to, because if you try to persuade a person, like, it rarely happens. If a shark is out, say I'm out, it's not like you can say that the shark goes, oh, okay, well, I'm back in, right? So instead of doing it, just focusing on who is still interested, make your pitch there, but the other sharks are still listening, right? So that's what happened with me, that I was talking with the three other sharks that were still in, and then suddenly, I said something that piqued Mark's interest again, and then, he went back in. Um, but it was a very tough negotiation. And what the toughest part is, it's not like in real life, if you get an offer from a quiet light potential buyer, you can sit for a minute, you can think for
Yeah.
5 minutes, you can call a coworker or ask advice and let it process. But there's no time to process. You're literally there. The
Yeah.
sharks are looking at you, and it's like Robert and they had an offer for $250,000 for 15%. And it's like, yeah, I want to make a deal with this. I was trying to calculate what will be the valuation of this offer. And so I'm like trying to calculate, still responding to questions, still rebuttal, like, no, that's too much, like, because we have this and this going.
Right.
So it's very, you don't have time to think, basically.
That's a great point because, you know, people don't realize this is a reality show, but it is your business that's on the line here. So you have to make the right decision. And it's such an amped up, you obviously get in there and you get adrenaline running and you may do things you don't want to do, which is kind of interesting. So I want you to go into, tell me a little bit. So I'm going to go through it. I know that said she was quickly out, then Mark was out, and then it sort of moved around and it seemed like you did a really good job doing that. So I was astounded at how great the end was. So maybe tell the listeners about exactly how all that worked out.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, you still see it, but these are a couple spoilers. But no, like to your point, it's like the producers did the really press to you. It's like, hey, do not accept a deal that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing, right? Like just really make sure. But it's hard because you're there in the moment. But for me, I love all the sharks, but I thought, especially for this product, I love Lori a lot. I think she's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, her experience in retail and QVC and all that stuff. I think this product would be perfect for her portfolio. So, regardless of who, I definitely wanted Lori in it as well. Um, Second, I thought, okay, um, you know, more sharks, better. So it was not like I wanted to target one shark. I wanted to actually have a deal with multiple sharks. Um, so when Mark came back in, I did tell to Laura, like, hey, Lori, get in that same deal and try to persuade her to just go with Mark um, and leave Kevin behind, basically. So
Yeah, that's interesting because you and I both had offers from Lori and Kevin at the same time that included equity and royalty. It's amazing how many times they end up syncing up. But at the end of the day, you go through this and you got Mark back in, you got Lori, and you got Robert to all make an offer. You got 60% of the sharks to come in on one deal, which is amazing. I mean, how'd that feel when you were doing it right then? It had to be like a rush.
yes, and they edited they edited amazing, and they have to edit to make it a little bit more. But the reality was, as soon as Mark said, um, 250,000 for 8%, but you have to say yes. Between that and me saying we have a deal was very short. It was very like because as soon as he said that, Lloyd jumped up and said like we'll match it, and then Kevin was not feeling it. And then okay, Lord, then go with Mark. Let's all do it together. And then she said sure, like, and then she negotiated for the advisory shares, right? So it's 8% equity, 2% advisory shares, and then it's like yes, let's have a deal. And then we jumped up, and that was it felt great. When I walked back, the producers and people backstage were like, "Oh my God, you almost lost the deal." It was so, it was very. I think it was very close of losing the whole deal.
Yeah.
until March.
Those things change in a minute. Look at Kevin. He looked exhausted. It's like he must have been tired or something. He laid back in his chair, his head was up, and he was just I think he knew when Mark came back, he knew it was going to kind of happen. Well, that's amazing. And I know you guys are working through this. Your show just aired, so I'm sure you're going to be talking to Mark, Lori, and Robert quite a bit. So post show, now you had all this anticipation. How'd you feel afterwards, regardless of how the deal happens or what happens? How did you feel about the whole process?
Um, Amazing. I felt like everyone backstage, super nice, the whole process, the experience. And again, for me, it was also a bucket list item to have this experience, right? I really was there, not just for my business, not just to get, an investment. I was there for the experience. It's like I watched this show, 10 years ago, and now I'm on it. And it was well worth all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears. Everybody was really nice. But then, even in the back of your mind, okay, we taped, but there's no guarantee that it's going to get aired, right? Like you never know if you're actually going to get aired until they let you know later, months later, basically.
Yeah.
So that was another emotional roller coaster for like,
Yeah.
are we going to get aired? Are we not? Should we buy inventory? Should we change the website? Like, you go through that roller coaster.
And many times you don't know to a really short notice. So buying products, stocking things, you almost have to anticipate that it's going to happen. But I have known people that stocked inventory and then didn't air. Like it's really tough. I have another client that I work with that I travel around and do some speaking with. It has an unbelievable subscription box business, and they never got on. It was amazing, and their business is astoundingly good. So it's really tough to get on that show. It's such an amazing thing. I mean, you just killed it. I mean, I don't want to give all of it up. People go watch this episode. It's really kind of the most recent one, or a couple of weeks ago, right? So people can go watch that. So tell us a little bit about this. I know we haven't talked, and that's kind of enough on the Shark Tank thing. I think it's awesome. Obviously, it was a great process, but tell us about Genius Litter and what's going on in 24. I mean, I want people to know about your product and your business.
Yeah. Let's do some pitching. So
there we go.
Hey sharks, my name. No, so Genius Litter. It's a health indicating litter. It changes color if your cat is sick. So cats are known to hide their illnesses. It's very difficult to see if their behavior change if they're sick. It's not like dogs. Dogs you can see a little bit better if they're not feeling well. And it tests out for UTIs, bladder issues, cancer issue, like specific types of cancer. And if it changes color, it warns you to go to a vet to have it double checked. Exciting things is that we launched 2 new products. One is a health indicating topper. So it's a little bag that you can sprinkle on top of your existing litter. If you or your cat is really, like, we love our clay litter and we don't want to change, you can still use our like topper, and that will change color if your cat is sick, similar as our litter itself. And then we have a health indicating doggy pee pad. Same concept, your dog pees on the pad, hopefully not on the carpet, but on the pad, and it changes color if your dog has potential health issues. So we are really pivoting Genius Litter in more of a health monitoring, product company versus just a litter brand. And yeah, it's going well. We are in, Target, PetSmart. We're talking to a couple other retailers, available online, and yeah, it's grown really well. And it's also amazing because we get tons of emails of people of like, thank you so much. I didn't know, like, I saw the litter, change color, and I went to the vet, and, our cat it turned out to have a UTI, and I didn't know. So it's also like very good to see and hear, the stories of our customers.
I think it's really amazing. And truthfully, I knew a little bit about the product, but until I watched it in practice on the show, I never really realized the scope of it. And what's interesting is my wife and I, we had two cats, both of which are now gone. And one, we just found out 4 or 5 months ago, when we put it to sleep, had a tumor that we didn't detect. And had we had that, I don't know whether it would have, obviously wouldn't have fixed it. It might have been able to intervene, but worst case, we sort of felt terrible that we might have let the cat suffer for a while before we really found out what was going on, which we sort of regretted. So once I saw this, I'm like, wow, if I'd have known that, it might have saved the cat, or it might have saved us a little bit of shame in our minds. I'm sure you get a lot of people that come in and tell you that, correct?
Yeah, and it's to your point, it's with the litter, it's really like detecting issues earlier. It doesn't really prevent the issue, but it detects earlier so that the cat is not walking around with, kidney stone or a painful UTI for weeks until it gets so bad that you really start seeing, behavior change. And it's really just almost like a stoplight, like, hey, there's a potential issue, go to the vet. And especially older cats will, any cat above 10 years old is sooner or later is going to have kidney issues. So this litter will help you detect it early on, so you can go to the vet sooner.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I think the product is so amazing. I mean, it's like, so let's rewind it. You sold a business through Quiet Light. You were able to build another business that's absolutely scaling and is helping people, which is incredible. It's not only a great business, it's helping people and their pets who people are fanatical about. You got on Shark Tank. You have this great stuff going. What's next for Ramon? I mean, you're killing it. What else are you going to be doing in 24? Anything?
No, well, I'm focusing on Genius. But first, I'm going to enjoy my 15 minutes of fame. It's almost done. I have a couple of minutes left of this 50 minutes, and focusing on building Genius Litter. And then, my goal is to sell the business to strategic. Ideally, I think it's a great acquisition for strategic. I don't know when, but in the meantime, I'm going to keep building. But with any business, I want to sell. Like I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I'm very, I love to work on different projects and, move on to the next thing. So the goal is to sell Genius Litter. The question is,
I'll send you over the engagement letter now, because I better get that deal since Joe isn't around. Even now, I'm just messing with you. I think, Ramon, it's really amazing. I think that the great thing is like, everyone at Quiet Light, this is just how big a community, and I'll brag on Quiet Light a little bit because we have so many great advisors, great people involved in this company. Everyone was engaged when we had someone that was successful through Quiet Light that got on Shark Tank. Man, you killed it. I'll be honest with you. It's one of the best episodes I've watched in a long time. So regardless of anything that turns out, you're going to find the growth. I know you're getting involved in our Shark Tank group now, which Ethan Alexander and I go to that show every year and speak. We're excited to get out there and work with those entrepreneurs. I think what you're going to find is that you'll become educational and you'll add so much value to other entrepreneurs via this TV show. It's something that's happened to me, and I'm super, excited about working with all these people. Have you had people reach out that have asked you questions or wanted to work with you in other ways?
Yeah, all across the whole board. I got 2 people that want to apply to Shark Tank and wanted to ask them questions. And it's very great to be, help other entrepreneurs, that are starting their journey, all the way to retailers. And, I've reached out. But I'm very happy that the show, the sharks, but also the editing. I think they did a good job of making it a really good episode. Basically, that was also a little bit my fear. Is like you have no control what the questions they're going to ask. And you also have no control how they're going to edit it, right? Like, are they going to make me look like an idiot, or like, are they going to make, you have no control over it. But
well, the thing that I know is they don't looking at your business, the way you pitched it, the reactions, the questions, you've done an amazing job building this company. Some of that doesn't come through on the show. It's more, sometimes I think also entrepreneurs up there look like at times like, hey, I really need help. I haven't done a great job. You did an amazing job building this business before you even got in there. I thought you positioned the price great because it gave nothing but upside. It wasn't an egregious amount of money. They could get involved and be engaged. I think you did an amazing job. So, but again, Ramon, it's always amazing to have you on the Quite Like podcast. I don't want to, you pumped Joe up early, which I hate doing. I don't want to inflate his ego any. Other than that, I think everything we talked about was awesome. But man, I appreciate you coming on the Quite Like podcast today again, man. It's always great to have you. And please, maybe we'll follow up and see how it was 6 or 9 months from now and how things change. I'd love to have you back. We'll get a chance. I appreciate you today.
All right. Thank you.